Buongiorno, Booktube. This is the third in I think in this series I've been doing of poem analyses that I had done for poemanalysis.com. We did Mistral, the Chilean Nobel laureate. We did Tagore, the Indian Nobel laureate. Today we're going to do Carducci, the Italian Nobel laureate. Some of this is the layout is set up by the way the website works. So I'll get right into it. Here we go. Carducci, Italy's first Nobel laureate in literature, was one of Italy's premier poets in his time and deserves to be better remembered. He was a prolific poet, best known for his work Odi Barbari. Virgil is a Petrarchan sonnet in honor of one of Italy's greatest writers of all time. There is a calmness and clarity to the order and precision of imagery in the poem. Carducci wrote a famous poem in praise of Phoebus Apollo. This poem partakes of an Apollinian composition of the kind Nietzsche contrasted to Dionysian frenzy in the birth of tragedy. There is a lull after the storm to Virgil. Camille Paglia also has quite a lot to say about Apollinian art, if you're interested in literary critics. All right, here's the sonnet. As went over the heated fields the moon, hovers to spread its veil of summer frost. The brook between its narrow banks half lost, glitters in pale light, murmuring its low tune. The nightingale pours forth her secret boon, whose strains the lonely traveler accost. He sees his dear one's golden tresses tossed, and time forgets in love's entrancing swoon. And the orphan mother who has grieved in vain, upon the tomb looks to the silent skies, and feels their white light on her sorrow shine. Meanwhile the mountains laugh, and the far-off main, and through the lofty trees a fresh wind sighs. Such is thy verse to me, poet divine. All right, so that's the poem, and it follows the table of contents, reading the poem, summary, detailed analysis, structure, form, frequently asked questions, poetry, review corner, and comments. Summary. Virgil uses nature imagery to evoke historical and mythical themes and events. The title is a reference to an epic poet who wrote his masterpiece, the Aeneid, in Latin around 20 BCE. The Aeneid is the story of the journey of the hero Aeneas from the fallen walls of Troy to the seven hills of Rome. It is a foundational myth for Rome, like the myth of the twins Romulus and Remus, suckled by the she-wolf. Virgil is also steeped in the fall of Troy without even once alluding to it. As wet above the heated field the moon hovers to spread its veil of summer frost, the brook between its narrow brook half lost glitters in pale light, murmuring its tune. Stanza 1. The opening lines contain 5 feet. The feet are made up of iambs, an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. There are 4 lines with an ABBA rhyme scheme. The iambic pentameter meter with the stanza of 4 lines in this rhyme scheme suggests a sonnet form. The hero of the first stanza is the moon. To the heat of the fields it brings a veil of frost. It finds out even the half-lost brook in its narrow banks cast a glitter upon it. The moon may be the light of peace that casts a cooling veil of peace over the bloody fields of Troy. Hints of conflict yet remain, summer frost, pale light, and especially the inversion in the line of the moon above and field below. At the end of the stanza, the brook takes over, managing a low tune. But there seems to be some trouble getting into motion. The moon moves but at a hover. Water should flow quicker in narrow banks, but can manage but a murmur. It is half lost. Troy is completely lost. Perhaps it is Aeneas who is half lost. Stanza 2. The nightingale pours forth her secret boon, who strains the lonely traveler accost. He sees his dear one's golden tresses tossed, and time forgets in love's entrancing swoon. By the way, I've noticed a lot of care being given to credit translators on BookTube, which I certainly value and encourage. Unfortunately, a lot of things that I get off of the internet do not have the attributions to the translators for me to share those with you. As a person who's done a fair amount of translation, literary translation, well, more non-literary, but who has done some literary translation, I can tell you that I am never used to getting credited. So that's a nice new thing, I guess, that's happening. So here we are, stanza 2. The second stanza exactly repeats the meter and rhyme scheme of the first. When conjuring about the nightingale's secret boon, Ovid's fable will help us more than Shelley's ode. Ovid was another Latin poem of Rome who wrote etymological stories in his Metamorphoses. Ovid tells the story of Philomela and Tereus, her sister's husband. Tereus rapes Philomela, cuts out her tongue, and locks her away. She manages to weave a message for her sister, who rescues her. The sisters then feed Tereus his own son and escape as birds, Philomela as a nightingale. The theme of morbidness is one that Carducci finds undergirding much of Italian literature, from Tasso to Leopardi. Despite the morbid context, the poem refers to the nightingale's boon or benefit. Could it be an escape, artistic communication, weaving, or revenge? Its pouring forth would seem to indicate its song and so expression. Strain carries a further connotation, and the sound implies an effort. Indeed, it accosts the lonely traveler. Might the clue lie in the word lonely? The traveler is so lonely that even this strained company of bird call is welcome. It brings a dream of blonde tresses tossed. They are not wind-tossed, but in love's entrancing swoon. That time forgets awe, so seems to suggest that the love image is both present and absent, a memory. Stanza 3. Now these are going to be the triplets, the 3 lines. And the orphan mother who has grieved in vain upon the tomb looks to the silent skies and feels their white light on her sorrow shine. So the third stanza changes up the flow a bit, continues in iambic pentameter, but there are only 3 lines now. The C, D, E, lack of rhyme. If we have been imagining a romantic love, the introduction of the orphaned figure suggests we ought to have considered a maternal love swoon instead. If Virgil is to be the father of Rome, is orphan Troy the mother? The theme of loneliness is reinforced by the orphan mother and her grief. It is clear that we are still in smoldering Troy upon the tombs. The silent skies are full of ghosts. Skies, I think that wants to be. But there is some glory to the fallen as white light upon her sorrow shines. And stanza 4. Meanwhile the mountains laugh and the far-off main, and though the lofty trees a fresh wind sighs, such is thy verse to me, poet divine. Now this stanza exactly repeats the meter and rhyme scheme of the third stanza, just as the second stanza exactly repeats that of the first. There's a shift in tone, however. This is the vira, the turn. The mountains laugh. Could they be the 7 hills of Rome? All roads lead to the far-off main. Actually, the vira in Petrarchan sonnets occurs between the 8 lines and the 6 lines, right? Although it brings a sigh, an echo of the murmur of the first stanza, it is a fresh wind that blows. It can fill the sails that lead on to Rome at last. The wind is also the wind of inspiration, not just for Virgil, poet divine with capital P, but for Carducci as well. Structure and form. This poem is indeed a sonnet, and it is the type of sonnet that's called Petrarchan sonnet. I need to stop extemporizing comments that I'm going to end up reading you in, off the website in a minute. So the Petrarchan sonnet is in Italian form, but it's not classical. It was developed during the Renaissance. And sonnets have 14 lines. I remind you here that classical, in this sense, in the old sense, means, Greco-Roman. So these are from the Renaissance. Sonnets have 14 lines. Unlike other sonnet forms, which end in a heroic couplet after 3 stanzas of 4 lines, the Petrarchan sonnet ends with 2 stanzas of 3 lines, which are technically 1 stanza, called the sextet, or set of 6. The 2 stanzas of 4 lines that precede them are technically 1 stanza, also called the octet, set of 8. The 2 stanzas of Virgil, then, would have the rhyme scheme ABBA, ABBA, octet, followed by CDE, CDE, sextet. There's often a shift in tone and theme between the octet and sextet, which is called the volta. Oh, sorry, I said vira. Giro, giro, gionda, casca il mondo, casca la terra, tutti giù per terra. That's Ring Around the Rosie in Italian. It's about all the Italian I know. In Virgil, the volta actually takes place in the middle of the sextet, after what we have called the third stanza, another reason we have preferred this division. Oh, I see. So I was making a point of that. Carducci clearly loved the Petrarchan sonnet form for poems of praise. He also wrote a Petrarchan sonnet in honor of Homer in ABA, B, ABA, B, CDE, CDE, D, CDE, DCE form. He chose this form over the more classic elegiac couplets. He even used the Petrarchan sonnet in his praise of Dante, rather than using terza rima as Dante himself preferred. So Dante, who wrote, the Divine Comedy, which Inferno is the most popular, he wrote that in a form of poetry called terza rima, sort of in threes. Very beautiful. Maybe we'll do a video on it at some point. FAQs. Does Carducci often use bird imagery? Yes, for instance, in Odi Barbare he writes, the forest feels thee, and with a cool shiver awake, up soars the falcon, flashing in eager joy. Meanwhile, amid the wet leaves mutter the garrulous nests, and far off the gray gull screams over the purple sea. Does Carducci often use bird symbolism? Oops. Bird imagery. Oh, that was bird imagery. Now we're talking about bird symbolism. Yes, for instance, in Odi Barbare, he writes, the dead are saying, blessed are ye who walk among the hillsides flooded with the warm rays of the golden sun. Cool murmur the waters through flowery slopes descending. Singing are the birds to the verdure, singing the leaves to the wind. And finally, does Carducci evoke birds in his definition of poetry? Yes, for instance, in Odi Barbare he writes, I hate the custom verse. Lazily it falls in with the taste of the crowd, and pulseless in its feeble embraces lies and sleeps. For me, that vigilant strophe, which leaps with the plaudits and rhythmic stamp of the chorus, like a bird caught in its flight, which turns and gives battle. Finally, it says, GIO Carducci was an Italian poet, writer, and teacher, won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1906. He's one of the most prominent poets in late 19th century Italy, and his poetry is characterized with lyricism, classicism, and patriotic themes. This is one of his best poems, demonstrates his typical style and appreciation of form. All right, so that's another poem from the poemanalysis.com series. Check them out over there if you want to read them, where you can actually see the words and take your time with the analysis. Hopefully I have inspired that much with my my lively rediscovery of it here with you today. All right, we'll see you. Maybe we'll have another one soon. Bye.